Hello there, good evening, and welcome to this edition of Business Connections Live. This is Business Connections Live number 7, and I'm Steve Highland. And boy, have we got a great show lined up for you tonight. What are we going to be looking at? I can tell you what we're going to be looking at. It's all about SEO. What does that mean? What's that all about? Of course, it means it is search engine optimization. Now, if you're not into this, don't worry. This isn't going to be just an hour of complete tech. What we're talking about here are things that you can do proactively, that you can use on your website that'll increase traffic. Things have actually been happening as far as Google are concerned that may affect your page's rankings. So what does that mean? What's that all about? What's a ranking in the first place? Andy Williams, the digital marketing manager from Kazai, is with us. Andy, it's great to have you with us this evening. Search engine optimization. Yep. What does that mean then?
Basically, it's an art that allows you to make sure that your site is relevant and is found by Google and other search engines, so that you can appear for search terms that people are looking for your site for.
Now, there's a lot of misconceptions about this, aren't there? And there's also the fact is that you can be affected by the actions that Google take when it comes to the way that they look at your website. So what are the big pitfalls, do you think?
Absolutely. Mainly the big pitfalls recently will be the changes to the algorithm. So they're kind of looking at the way that SEOs and other agencies used to work with sites and used to set them up. If you look at sort of like the quality of the content or even the link building activities that went on, Google are now sort of stamping down on that. So the pitfalls are coming about through old tactics that are now deemed old hat, not relevant, and Google are turning off the signals. And if you've broken certain rules that they're simply not happy about, if you've been spamming or anything like that, basically you're going to start dropping down the rankings pretty quickly.
Do you think a lot of people actually go through and do the dark arts? Do you think a lot of people do that deliberately, or do they think it's just best practice?
Bit of both, to be honest with you. Some people will use what's known as black hat to get a really quick gain. It could well be that they're perhaps a payday loan site, for example. If they appear first very, very quickly using black hat SEO techniques, they're going to get a lot of money through the door really quickly. By the time Google catches up with them, it doesn't matter, they've made their buck. But some people will naively use tactics that Google now frown upon. That's kind of no fault of their own. They're trying to do what they think is relevant and what Google want them to do. So that's where guys like myself come in, because obviously we know the right things to do.
Now, you're a large organisation. We're going to find out a little bit more about the company you work for. You're going to tell us more about what black hat actually really means and how it will affect us if we've got a website and we want to optimise it and make it more friendly to these search engines. We're going to be doing all of that. And it's great to have you with us this evening, and it's great to have your company as well. Incidentally, if you are watching this on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. There's a new programme every Wednesday night. We go live at 7, and we're here to bring you the information that you need for your small to medium scale business. Even if you're a large organisation, in fact, we've got something that's going to be relevant to your particular business. And remember, this is all about business growth. It's all about getting more money on that bottom right hand corner of the spreadsheet. It's about making bucks in your pocket. Tell you what we should do. We should look back at what happened on last week's edition of Business Connections Live. We had two lovely ladies. We had Vanessa Lanham-Day, who was a marketing expert, and we also had Louise Punter, who is the CEO of the Chamber of Commerce for the Surrey area. A fascinating evening, a fascinating show, and really lots of good advice to make certain that you're getting the most out of your chamber, and you're also getting the most when it comes to your marketing. Because at the end, what they always say is everything is marketing, and marketing is absolutely everything. So let's find out what happened on last week's edition of Business Connections Live. If you're thinking about maybe doing some additional marketing for your business, how do you go about doing that? What are the tricks that are out there? What are the things you should be considering? And if you'd like to find out more about the chambers, now there are chambers up and down the country. We have got Louise Punter. She's the CEO of Surrey Chamber of Commerce. Louise, it's lovely to have you with us tonight. And also with us today, we've got Vanessa Lanham-Day. She is the MD of On Track Marketing. Vanessa, it's lovely to have you with us as well.
Lovely to be here, Steve.
But actually, today's Chambers of Commerce are absolutely responding to businesses and creating activities, events, different services, projects that are actually meeting today's needs.
And I now describe myself as a marketing inspirer, because for good or ill, what I seem to be really good at is making people do stuff and getting behind them and really giving them sort of a sharp stick, and I do that in my consulting capacity with on-track marketing. We do lots of one-to-one with people, but for a lot of people that's expensive. Perhaps it's more than they're able to invest, and I just get really excited about it because we've been having a huge amount of success in Surrey.
What do you think the big misconceptions are about the Chamber? What are they? What are the things that people get wrong about you?
That it is purely a networking organisation, that it is attended only by, and I must be very careful here, but one category of person, but actually it is attended by all ages, all types of businesses. And you mentioned small and tiny businesses. We actually have some of the largest businesses in Surrey that are members of Surrey Chambers as well, which is fantastic because they can offer support to the smaller companies.
In the work that we do with smaller businesses, one of the big issues they have is growth and starting to delegate tasks, and the business owner being able to have more time to work on their business. And we're always encouraging people to consider taking people on, and it's a big risk when you're a small business. And the whole apprentice concept is fantastic, and apprentices are in so many walks of life, and I know these guys are really big in supporting that, and it makes such a difference to smaller businesses. It's a cost-effective way, it de-risks the whole process, but it's a scary thing because there's lots of forms to fill in and stuff that they need to do to get the government support, and the Chamber is really good at it. I think most people misunderstand marketing because my definition of marketing is all about bringing leads to the business, and I think a lot of business owners think very much about sales, but they miss out that whole chunk of marketing is about building a database, bringing leads, then you can work with them and nurture them and keep talking to them, and eventually customers will fall out the bottom if you've got the right sales processes. But if people try and take someone from having never really met them before into a selling process, it's too big a leap. And particularly in this day and age, it's very competitive out there. So our focus is always about helping people build lists, build a really relevant database, and have proper conversations with them, and customers will follow.
They don't really know how to reach out and they don't know where to start. So if we can just get them along to at least one chamber meeting and get them into the sort of swing of things, what happens then is that we then introduce them on to people like Vanessa, to other experts in other areas who then can take them the next step, along the way. But I think what it is, there's a lot available to businesses, but they're just not really taking full advantage of it.
Well, just to make contact with us, there's all the details are on the various websites, and we'll always talk to them. We have lots of really powerful programs. Like I said at the beginning, I see myself as a marketing inspirer. I'm very direct and blunt with people, and that does seem that there's quite a lot of woolly people in this industry, and people don't tend to think that I'm very woolly. So I will always tend to tell them exactly the way it needs to be, and they either love it or they hate it, but I don't leave them in any doubt.
So come and join the Chambers of Commerce, particularly in Surrey, and we will represent you, we will promote you, and we will help you to grow your business through promoting what you do. And I have a particular thing to mention, which is we have an event on the 6th of November at the City Skyline in Epsom, completely free, and anybody that's watching would be absolutely welcome to come along and try for yourself. Nothing like try before you buy. And that will be on our website, www.surrey-chambers.co.uk.
And my thanks to the two ladies from last week's programme. And don't forget, it's Business Connections Live, here to help you as a small to medium scale business. Now, my guest this evening is Andy Williams. Andy, you're an SEO expert, and we're really going to be working our way through the different areas that affect the small to medium scale enterprises website, things that people don't truly realise. Now, you mentioned just before we had a quick look back at last week's programme about Black Hat. What's that all about?
It's basically all the tactics Google don't want you to do. And it's an art in itself. A lot of people frown on it and say, there's no room for Black Hat. But in all honesty, it does have its place and it can be effective. But for long-term investment, long-term gain, long-term rankings, don't go near it, because you will get caught up very, very quickly by Google. What you need to do is stay within the rankings and use ethical SEO tactics, which is what we look into.
And that's what's really important. It's about being ethical, isn't it?
Yeah.
So where do we start with when it comes to SEOing our website? What's the first thing we should be looking at, and what are the big mistakes that people are making at the moment?
Well, there's a couple of ways of looking at this. You've got the more generic SEO tactics, which is more for the bigger corporations. But if we're talking more small to medium-sized businesses, it's important that they actually incorporate a local SEO campaign as well as the normal SEO tactics. So what this means is that they become relevant within their certain catchment area for their terms. So you need to make sure that Google has all the information to make sure that it can locate you, it knows exactly where you are, and it's all about them building profiles and social signals and so forth all around your site, so that these continued bits of information get fed to Google, and Google know exactly where you are, they know you're relevant to certain terms, and they know you're relevant for a local audience.
And so what are the key things then you should be putting into your site? Now, one of the things that really frustrates me is I will go onto somebody's site and there's no telephone number there, so I can't contact them directly anyway. And I suppose legally you've also got to have your address on there if you are a business, don't you?
Pretty much, yeah. And the phone number one is a big one, and it's something that we always try to push. If you've got that in the top left-hand corner or the top right-hand corner or somewhere that's visible, the second you get onto a website, it just adds that bit of authority, it adds that bit of trust as well, because you know that there is a point of contact, so that you know if anything goes wrong or you need any information, or even if you're booking something as extreme as a holiday or something, if there's a phone number there, you're instantly going to trust that site. So it's important you have that point of contact on there. And it's very important from a local point of view that you actually use your local phone number for that as well. Some people use an 0845 number, but if you can actually put that local number on there instead, that gives that signal to Google. So it's important that you look at that. Some businesses won't want to do that. They'll be looking for a nationwide audience, so they won't do that. But the address side of things, it's important that you have that on every single page. And a lot of people will only put that on their contact page or their home page. But Google ranks pages, it doesn't rank websites. So it might well be that a particular product page is ranking really well. But if you haven't got that local citation, that local bit of information on there, then Google won't know that you're local to a certain area. So you need to have that in every single page. And one of the most common places to put it is in the footer of a site, because it then fits into
Is that okay to put it in the footer?
It's absolutely fine, yeah. I mean, in an ideal world, it would be right in the top right-hand corner or the top left-hand corner, but then you're taking away valuable space where you could actually be selling the product. So the footer is the main place that a lot of people put it, and it's nice and neat, and it sits in the template.
Now, when you mention about that, so the telephone numbers, because they can be localized from their prefix,
yeah,
that's one area. What about the places or the towns or where you actually are? Is it important? Do you put a number in, or do you put a number of different towns in, or do you put the surrounding towns in where you want your core business to come from? I'm beginning to sound like this could be the bit of the scam, actually, couldn't it? I'm actually from here, 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 and here. I mean, what do you put there? Just
put your address as it is. The bit of information that's probably the most important is the postcode, because then Google knows exactly where you are. And the time that you become relevant is when Google knows exactly where you're searching from. So what we've seen with the Venice update that came out quite a while back, I think it's 2012, but a lot of people missed it, was that now you don't actually need to be logged in order for Google to give you local results. So this has kind of changed everything, because local results are now pushing down the more generic rankings. So you could well be missing out on traffic that you thought you were otherwise getting. So because Google knows where you are because of your IP, it will then register what your postcode is. And it's basically the companies that are closest to the IP that is searching will be favorited in the search results. So you kind of can't game the system from that point of view. But if you look at things like Google Places and Google Plus local pages, that's when you can start to build your catchment area. You can start to say that you're relevant within a certain space in mileage. So you could say we're relevant within 50-mile radius, 100-mile radius, whatever it is. So there's different places that you can actually add that information to. But from a putting the information on your website point of view, it's the postcode that's probably the most important thing. But you should always put your full address. Don't try and game the system. Don't try and add any extra information.
Because they will catch up on on you, won't they?
Absolutely, and you'll start to appear in places that you're not relevant, or you'll mix up the signals and Google will become a bit confused and it won't know exactly where you're located.
Well, you mentioned there the Google Venice update. You've got a little slide that you actually put together for us here, just to really reiterate those key points, and I think it's very relevant. I mean, we've got the local results are now returned, so whether you are logged in or you're not logged in, you're actually going to get the results back for your local area when you actually start doing your searches.
Absolutely.
So that's pretty important, and it's actually a bit of a game changer, to be honest with you, in many respects, isn't it? So remember that. If you've got to have your details in there if you're looking for business from your local area. Local results are now pushing your ranking down. So even though you may have been working towards a national audience, now what you've got is you've got those local results that are coming in. And remember, people may well find themselves in a situation where they don't have to log into Google anymore, and that's going to push your ranking down. Am I right in that?
That's right, yep.
And you don't even need to be logged in to see your local results. I think that is the thing that is the most amazing concerning the fact that Google is doing that.
Absolutely. And what's important to understand here is it's not going to affect everyone. So, for example, if you're IBM or you're Nike, the kind of search terms that are relevant to those companies, things will stay the same. So it's a search that Google thinks has got a local intent behind it. So if you're looking at cafes, restaurants, butchers, dentists, it used to be a case where you'd put in dentist Southampton, for example, to find out where you were. Now you can just put in dentists and you will get your local results. So it's not everyone who's going to be affected, but a majority of people, if Google thinks it's got local intent behind your search, you'll get local results returned to you.
I think that's just amazing. Never realised that was the case, and it does say a lot then. So really, you've really got to be very conscious, haven't you, that you're putting the right information in. What's the next step that we should be looking at then?
Basically, you need to make sure that all the relevant information is on your site before you do anything else. We discussed making sure that you've got your phone number on there and your address, but things like title tags and meta description tags, if you can place your location within those tags, that's another heads up to Google as to exactly where you are.
And are tags still important?
They are to a point. Title tags are very much important. Meta description tags, there's the wide general consensus is that they don't really have much of a ranking factor anymore. However, they do appear in Google and they're kind of your selling pitch. So making sure you've got the right information there is still highly important. Keyword tags, ignore. They're not read anymore by Google, so don't worry about those. So it's just the title tags and the meta description tags. If you can get your location in those, brilliant. However, if it does start to make your titles read in a way that you don't want them to come across, they don't quite fit, don't ever force any information in. If it doesn't read right, if it doesn't look right, don't add it in. Make sure that then you've got local information within your content or your H1 tags or any other areas within your site that is relevant.
Now, when we talk about H1 tags, what we're talking about there is we're talking about the larger headlines that we put in. So they are also read by Google as well. So it's not just there to make it look pretty.
No.
H1 or the larger tags, they are really important because they are giving signposts to Google that you must read this information.
Absolutely, and again, the H1 tag is probably not as strong a signal as it used to be. However, from a selling point of view, it's important if you want to get a message across. And also, you're giving Google the heads up. This is what my page is about. So if you're looking to target a local audience and you can get your location in there, go for it. Make sure it looks okay.
All right, let's look at the next slide that you've got here, because this kind of gives you a bit of an example, really, of the sort of results we're talking about.
Yeah.
If you get all that localization right. Local intent, search equals local results, and I'm not even, this is the thing that I find amazing, I'm not even logged in to Google. Are your customers doing this? Are they going to the website and without even realizing it, what they're doing is they're getting your competition coming up before you come up, even though you may have the best product, all because you haven't put your local tags in to actually tell Google where you are. Now, I'm looking here that we've got the different, this is looking at cafes, isn't it? Coffee houses.
That's right.
So tell us a bit more about what we're looking at here.
Well, as you can see, the Wikipedia entry is top. As you would expect, Wikipedia is so strong, there's kind of nothing you can do about that. That's always going to rank. But what you'll see below there is you've got the local information, and the the chances of anyone searching simply cafes is probably a bit extreme, but it highlights exactly what is happening here. So these are all the cafes that were local to me at the time of searching and were the most relevant according to Google. So because we've now got what Google called the 7-pack, it's pushing all the generic rankings lower down the page, and some have even dropped onto page 2. So it could be a case of there could have been sites before that were ranking really well for cafes or related terms. They could be selling coffee, they could be coffee houses, etc., etc. But they might now be seeing a drop in traffic and they don't know why. And the reason is because Google is now wanting to give me local information. If I'm looking for cafes, I must simply be looking for a cafe. So do you know what? Here are 7
the
that are
local
local to
cafe.
you. Absolutely.
And they know your IP address, so of course they can actually do that. They know your general location,
Yep.
so they can give you the most relevant information. I suppose that's the byline, isn't it, for Google? It's the most relevant information for the search that you're making.
Yep. And that's exactly what they're striving to give you. So it does make sense, but it's just important that local businesses, small businesses are aware of this kind of change. And it's a change that's been around for almost 2 years, but it's been missed by so many people. It's insane.
All right then. So that's really interesting, and that kind of shows where Google are going then. Let's talk a little bit then. Let's go on to the next slide, and we'll talk a little bit about on-page optimization. And once again, these are all strange words. I think the whole area of SEO, on-page optimization, I sometimes refer to it as the black art, a little bit of black magic going on. So this is kind of a summary of the things that we should be considering, isn't it?
Yeah. Absolutely. We've covered the title tags and the meta descriptions and the names and address and the phone number. But again, everything that's on this list is basically just about making sure you are relevant. You are relevant to the services that you're providing, and you're giving Google the correct information, but you don't want to over-optimize. So,
you don't want to over-optimize?
Over-optimize. So
what does that mean?
In past days, people would fill their pages full of key terms that were relevant to their services.
So it was
products.
actually gobbledygook. There was once a technique, wasn't there, where they would put text on the page that was invisible.
Yep.
And it would be all the keywords.
Absolutely.
And Google sussed that, didn't they?
They don't like that at all. And that's classed as kind of over-optimization, spamming, slightly black hat. So what they now want you to do is create engaging content, engaging, unique content that people are going to actually enjoy. It's going to give them exactly what they want when they come to the site. It's going to give them the information that they need. You still need relevant information within that content, but at the same time, it needs to serve the purpose of the search. So if people are coming to your site and jumping straight off because actually, do you know what, you shouldn't be ranking there, Google are going to come wise to that, and you'll probably start to see yourself drop down. So when we look at things like content, it's important that you have your location within the content, but it's got to make sense. You've still got to sell your services. You've still got to tell the people exactly what you are. If you're a plumber, get the information out there. Are you 24 hours? How much do you charge? Do you work weekends? All the important information that people probably want to see when they're looking for a plumber. They don't want to know if you've been in business for 10 years or...
They're not interested, are they?
They're not. They don't
They
care.
want to know a plumber because their tap is dripping.
Yes, absolutely. So can you fix it?
And I suppose to a certain extent what we're saying is that when you're writing your content, put yourself in your customer or the person you want to read this mind's eye, isn't
Yeah.
it? So absolutely fascinating. So that's content. Make certain you've got your name and address and your phone number there, and make certain that your title tags and your meta are all doing what they should be doing.
Absolutely.
I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to talk about blogs and rich snippets in just a moment. Already I'm excited. I bet you can't wait either, can you? I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll take a little bit of a breather just for a few seconds, and we'll check out what's happening in the news. And with the latest news update on this edition of Business Connections Live, here's Linda Bezant.
I'm Linda Bezant with the business news for October the 30th, 2013. Official figures published by the Department for Business Innovation and Skills show that the number of private sector businesses in the UK has reached 4.9 million, eclipsing the record levels of last year. The 4.9 million businesses fall entirely in the small and medium-sized category, with businesses employing fewer than 250 people making up 99% of the total number. Those employing fewer than 50 employees make up nearly half of all businesses and account for a third of private sector turnover. Small and medium-sized enterprises employ 14.4 million people with a combined turnover of almost £1.6 trillion against a combined turnover of all UK businesses of £3.3 trillion. The government could use taxpayer money to guarantee loan insurance for small businesses under a plan being considered by the state-backed Business Bank. The bank, which aims to invest state funds in growth-boosting measures, is considering a proposal submitted by a specialist merchant bank that advises tech startups after a meeting with Vince Cable, the business secretary, who decided it was worth examining. It would involve a small company buying insurance to cover the risk of them defaulting on their loans, which they could then offer to banks as a guarantee to borrow money. It is understood that Business Bank has consulted a big British insurer about the plan. And UK economic output rose by 0.8% between July and September, official GDP figures show. The Office for National Statistics said there had been a fairly strong performance across all sectors. The data builds on a 0.7% GDP rise in the April to June period and is the best quarterly performance since 2010. Chancellor of the Exchequer George Osborne tweeted, "This shows that Britain's hard work is paying off and the country is on the path to prosperity." The Bank of England is expected to revise its forecast next month in response to the stronger growth data and may bring forward the date at which it expects the unemployment rate to fall to 7%. And Google-owned phone firm Motorola has announced a new project to let users customise their smartphone components. Project Ara allows users to buy a basic phone structure and add modules to it, such as keyboard, battery or other sensors. Motorola has partnered with Dutch designer Dave Hackens, who has created Phone Blocks, a modular phone idea. Experts were unsure on how big a shake-up for the mobile phone industry the customisable handsets would be. And that much-loved Windows XP operating system is now said to be 6 times more likely to fall victim to malware than those running Windows 8, according to Microsoft Trustworthy Computing General Manager Mike Reevey. Reevey said Microsoft spotted the trend while researching its latest threat report for a keynote speech at the RSA conference in Amsterdam. And the Prince's Trust is calling for urgent action from the government to tackle the problem of youth unemployment. Latest figures from the Office of National Statistics show 115,000 18 to 24-year-olds have been unemployed for longer than 2 years. A Department for Work and Pensions spokesman says youth unemployment isn't a new problem, but it's one we are determined to tackle. And through the youth contract, we've hugely increased the number of work experience placements and apprenticeships to give young people the help they need to find a job. It's really encouraging that there are 79,000 fewer young people claiming job seekers allowance than there were in 2010, and that the number has been falling for the last 16 months. But we're not complacent. We'll continue to do everything possible to give young people the best chance in life. So come on, all of you SMEs out there. I'm sure that you can create an opportunity for one of those young people that are so eager to prove their worth. Just contact the Prince's Trust, your local colleges or universities, or even your local Chamber of Commerce. Let's do it now. I'm Linda Bazant for Business Connections Live, and if you have any comments on these or any other stories, please contact us at studio@businessconnectionslive.com.
And my thanks to Linda Bazant with the news there. You're watching Business Connections Live. I'm Steve Hyland. With me, my guest tonight is Andy Williams. Andy, great to have you with us. We're talking about SEO and all things SEO at the moment. It's search engine optimization. That's what's so important. And we've already given you some of the hints and tips that you actually need to make certain that your site is performing better. Did you realise now that the localization issue is of paramount importance? Are you now considering the content that is on your website? What about the headings and the meta tags? Are you doing anything about those? And are they directing Google to give the right search engine results to the people that are looking for your business? That's what's important about this. Now, there is other things that you can do, other techniques that you can do to raise your own website's ranking. Let's move on to those. We kind of just skipped off there for a moment. Blogging. How important is a good blog on your website?
Very, very important indeed. But there's two ways of looking at your blog. If you can't maintain your blog, then don't have one. But in the same breath, it's really important that you do have one, because it creates content that Google can come regularly and crawl. You can do so many things with a blog. You can outreach to people that you wouldn't otherwise be able to with your site. You can answer questions that people might be asking that are relevant to your products or even the sector that you're in. But like I said, if you can't maintain it, then the last thing I want to see when I go to a site is that the last blog update was 2012. That just says to me that people aren't looking after their site.
It's a bit of a click moment, isn't it?
Absolutely, definitely. Yeah. So if I see that, I'm probably not going to trust the site that much. I may be alone in that, but I don't think so. But if you can maintain a blog and you can update it regularly, and it doesn't have to be every day, it doesn't even have to be every 2 days, but if you can do it regularly, that will then just entice Google to come back and crawl your fresh content. So that just brings them back to your site. It just keeps them aware of where you are, and it keeps everything up to date.
And what should be going through your mind when you're writing a blog? Is it a bit like when you're optimizing a page? Are you all about keywords, or are you just writing for somebody else to read it? And hopefully, because it's on the right subject, the keywords are going to come out naturally.
Yeah, to a point. I mean, if you're looking at this from an SEO point of view, and what you're trying to do is write optimized content, then yes, you will start to look at keywords. You will start to look at the reason you're writing a particular article. As I touched on previously, if you're answering a question that you know a lot of people are searching for, it makes sense that you write a blog post about it, because if you can rank highly for that question, people are then going to start to trust you. They're going to start to think that you're an authority within that sector. People will then start to naturally come back to your blog regardless of whether it ranks or not, because the information it will give them is engaging, it's giving them answers to what they want to know. So the more authoritative you can come across in your blog, the more your audience is going to naturally just build and build.
Now, when it comes to video blogging, a lot of people are saying now that you should produce your video blog and maybe put a transcript below it. Does that technique actually work? Absolutely,
because if you think about it, all the information within that video is probably highly relevant to the message you're trying to get across. But unless someone watches it, they're not going to get that message. But if you want that blog post that has got the video in it to rank, then having the transcript in there makes sense, because then all that information is then fed into Google. Chances are you probably don't even have to optimize it, because you're talking about a subject that is going to be relevant to your products or your services, so you're naturally going to talk about key terms that people are going to be searching for. So yeah, absolutely have the transcript on there.
Now let's just go through the slide that we've got here. It says here company promotion when it comes to blogs. Is this the percentage that we're talking about? I mean, just talk us around the chart that we've got here.
Yeah, I mean, this is just a rough guide, and in no way, shape or form should you sort of stick to that as a strict, definite guide. But from a local point of view, what I've tried to do here is sort of give you a few pointers as to what you might want to talk about. So if you sponsored a local event, write about it, make sure people know about it. If you're taking part in a local event, maybe there's a fun run or some sort of a charity event and you're just going along, you're supporting it, write about it. It doesn't matter that you're kind of promoting the event and not talking about your company, because you're talking about your location. You're talking about something that's relevant.
And once again, the location bit is so important, isn't it?
Absolutely, definitely. And the more that you just talk about your location, providing it's relevant to what you're writing about, obviously, the more that's just sending out those signals to Google. So if you then look at the pie chart and sort of the different subjects you should talk about, if 50% or roundabout there is industry related, you're probably going to be hitting the button pretty much all the time. You're going to be giving information to people that are looking for it. It's going to be relevant. It's going to be naturally optimized to the terms that you want to rank for. Company promotion, if you talk about yourself 25% or roundabout there, then you're selling your products, you're talking about your company, so you're building your brand awareness at the same time. And because you're talking about your company, now and then you might be naturally talking about your location as well. So again, you've got that local edge to it. And company publicity, so if you've won an award, or you're doing something, or maybe someone in your company has won an award, or they're doing something within the industry that is newsworthy, it's almost press release style information, then again, get that out there. But that's kind of a rough guide, but it's more often than not you will be talking about industry related information as opposed to just pushing your company.
The one question that keeps springing to mind is that by doing all the location, does that not narrow the audience that we're making ourselves available for? Because what we're after is, should we say, if you're a company that's maybe, should we say, where we are in Surrey, if we talk Surrey, but really we want to be selling to Manchester, to Scotland, are we not limiting the audience that we're going to get?
Not necessarily, because although you want your location and local information to be included from a local SEO point of view, hopefully you will still be carrying out a more generic SEO campaign. So you will still be pushing yourself nationwide. You'll still be going for those more generic terms that probably don't have local intent behind them. So you'll still be doing all the right things. It's just important that you get local information in. And that's just the edge that people are just not realising that they need to include now, which is why they're missing out on local rankings. So
is it page by page that Google is ranking your page, or is it by site?
No. When Google ranks something, they're ranking a page. They're not ranking a site. Your overall site strength has a say in how strong your pages within the site are. But basically, when you search for something, you get returned a page. So effectively, you could rank really well for one page on your site, and the rest of the site's nowhere to be found. That's plausible. That's something that could happen. But in an ideal world, you'll be optimising your entire site and you'll be building up the relevance of your entire site. So every page is as important as another page. Definitely. And remember that. And also this dual SEOing, one for your local audience, one for your national audience. Just be aware of what you're trying to achieve. Let's look at the next slide. It's a fantastic presentation. Don't forget about authorship is the title of this one. What's this all about? It says guaranteed #1 ranking in 48 hours and other lies. Absolutely. Hello. Tell us. This is the classic. You see this all over the internet. We'll tell you how to get to #1. We'll tell you how to be better, bigger, brighter, bolder. So tell us a little bit about this. This is more an example and it also sort of sends out a bit of a signal. They don't believe all the hype that this can be done overnight. But what it highlights is, if you look on the left-hand side, there's an image of myself on there. Yes, that's you, definitely. Absolutely. And that's set up through authorship. And what Google are trying to do now is they're trying to attribute ranking strength or author strength to individual authors. So it's not necessarily now about the company that is blog posting, it's about the individual authors that are posting blog updates. So it's important that you have authorship set up. And the way that you do this is you attach your Google Plus profile to your website and vice versa. And by doing that, you set up the authorship. In most cases, if you've got like a WordPress site, there's a plugin that does it. All you need to do is put in the URL of your Google Plus profile, and away it goes. It does the marrying up itself. And this is where you get, in the search, you actually get the picture, don't you? Yeah. Right. Absolutely. And as you can tell, if that was to appear in with 10 other sites and no one else had authorship, mine instantly jumps out and it stands out. Get another picture. Most definitely. A word of advice. Yeah. But that is fascinating, absolutely fascinating. And you're dead right. If you've got the authorship and your picture, your avatar is sitting there, your eye is going to be drawn to it, isn't it? Absolutely. That is incredible. So don't forget about your authorship. Get your authorship sorted out. If you've got a WordPress site, you say there's a plugin that should be able to help you out on that. If you're doing, shall we say, Dreamweaver or flat sites, you can still do the same there, can't you? Yep, it's just a case of putting the correct meta tag in the header of your coding. You don't need to be an expert to do it. It's straightforward. You just need to make sure that the connection is made.
And in the next couple of weeks, there will in fact be a video concerning exactly doing that on the website. So you'll be able to go along, you'll be able to see exactly how you should be able to do that. So don't forget about authorship. Let's look at the next slide that we've got up here. And finally, this is the last one actually, nearly, isn't it? But what are rich snippets? It says here, I'll read it out loud because I can. Structured markup is a way of annotating information already on your website to help Google and others understand information more precisely. Well, I thought I'm doing that with what I'm writing.
You are. But what Google decided to do, they met up with the other search engines and they decided that they wanted a form of coding that just gave that little bit more extra information to them. So if you go along to a site like schema.org, this will give you a list of all the relevant coding to all the relevant subject matters. So what is now considered the best practice is to put a rich snippet or a micro format around certain bits of information. So there's, for example, your address. If you put the correct rich snippet around the address, that gives a heads up to Google, this is the address, this is very important to me, make sure you take this on board. If you want to put it next to a review, it will then appear in the search engine results pages. I don't know if you've seen like the star ratings.
Yes, indeed, yep.
Restaurants, that's coming from a rich snippet. So these bits of information just give Google more to work with. What we're probably going to see is you're going to see more of this information within the results pages. So it's important that you start to mark up your site accordingly. But it is coding, and not everyone is a coder. I'm certainly not the best coder on the planet. So because there was this air of, not everyone can do it. Some people haven't got a web developer. They've just been given the site and away they go. So providing you've got a Webmaster Tools account with your site, there's a section in there called Data Highlighter, and that pretty much does the same thing. So if you click on there, it will then bring up a picture of your homepage or whatever site you require to mark up. And basically, you just highlight the section of information that you deem relevant, and then you tell it what it is.
Well, once again, that's something to look into, and is all of this something that ordinary people can do? People like I can do?
Definitely, it's all something that you can do because it's free. It's your site. You can go on there. You can do it. Webmaster Tools is free. It's all something that you don't need to be an expert in doing it. The expertise comes in. We know what we should be looking for. We know what Google are looking for. Whereas the more general public, if you like, don't know the little gems, the little bits of information that they need to include. Well,
let's talk a little bit in more detail about the possible markups. So we've got another slide that shows that here. And I see down the side you've got place, restaurant, product, review, aggregate review, and event. Just work our way through those very quickly. We've kind of talked about the place thing, haven't we?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, they're all pretty straightforward, really. If you've got a restaurant, then mark up your site so that it tells Google you are a restaurant. That's exactly what you are. Products, you can mark up individual products. So rather than marking up the entire page, you would mark up individual products, and you can add certain information in there so that you know how much they are, what colour they are, etc., etc. The more information you're given about that product, the better it is for you. And reviews and aggregated reviews, again, that's where the stars come from in the search results. If you've got that on your site, what you'll probably see as well is there's a Zagat do like a scoring system that Google have kind of taken on board, and they take a lot of information from there because Zagat are offering those rich snippets of information. So if you've got that information on your site, mark it up. And events, again, if you're running a local event or even a nationwide event, mark it up, get the information in there. So
this marking up does seem to be very, very important.
It's becoming more and more important. Not everyone is doing it at the moment, but the guys who are giving Google that extra bit of information are obviously going to start winning sooner rather than later.
All right, now, if we've done all our possible markups and we think, we've been through where the places are, our industry that we're in, the products that we're trying to sell, we've worked on the reviews and everything, the aggregate reviews too, and the event.
Yeah.
How do we check to see if we're getting it right? Now, you've got a slide for this, haven't you?
Yeah.
A testing tool. Tell us about this.
This is something that Google have put out there to just basically make sure that you are marking up your site correctly. So it's a very quick and easy way of doing it. So you put in your URL. Sorry.
Easy for you to say.
Absolutely, it's not today. So you put that information into the box and simply hit preview. And what you should see below there is basically the information as it would appear in Google. If it doesn't appear, you haven't marked it up correctly. If it appears, you're good to go. So it's as simple as that. So it's just a quick and easy way of going, finding out, making sure you're doing all the right things all the right way.
Which is a great idea. And you can see the web address is sitting there, google.com, Webmasters Tools, and rich snippets. So what else should we be considering? What else is there to help us?
Well, like I say, you've got the data highlighter tool, which is in Webmaster Tools.
And we've got a slide for that, haven't we?
Yeah.
Yep, there it is.
So as you can see there, that's where it is down the left-hand side of your menu, and it's basically click on Start Highlighting, and you will just see a screenshot of your site, and you will then be given the option to highlight bits of information within your page, and then that will create a drop-down menu. And you can simply tell Google exactly what that bit of information is. So that might be information about a person, it could be the address, it could be the event, it could be your location, your phone number, etc., etc. So if you can't code, if you can't do the rich snippet side of things, there is still a way of making sure that information gets marked up onto your site.
Do you think this is going to get more and more important then over the following years?
Yes.
Or is it important right now and we should really be doing this?
Because it's free to do, I would get cracking on it straight away. There's no reason why you wouldn't. And if Google are asking for information, give it to them. There's only one reason they're asking for it, and that's to rank you better.
Now, going back to this whole area of local relevance, I suppose.
Yeah.
How do we make up? And I know that's kind of going all the way back to where we started. But are there any sites out there that are going to help us?
There's loads, and it kind of falls,
another slide.
Always another slide.
Always another slide. Look at that, sites with local intent.
Fantastic. It kind of drops into the link building side of things now, because now you're starting to look off page. You're starting to look at how many signals, how many bits of information away from your site you can create to kind of back up the information you've got on your site. So if you go to sites that have local intent, some of these may be directories such as Yelp.com or 192, or review sites such as Yelp, which a lot of people use. If you create a profile within those sites and make sure that all the information is in there is correct, and then verify those profiles, you're giving Google more of a heads up as to where you are located. It backs up the information that's on your site, because it's almost like a third party is agreeing with what you're saying on your site.
So this is, if we go on to the next slide here, I can see that we've got Yelp here and showing what you're actually talking about.
Yeah, so it's always important to make sure that you get as much information into the profile as possible. But one of the really key things is to make sure that the address you include on your site is exactly the same address that you include on any other profiles that you then create. If you don't put in the correct information and it doesn't marry up, you can then lead to a point where you start to confuse Google, because it's not the same information. So does that really marry up with that site? I'm not sure. But if you're going to use something like Yelp, for example, as you can see the information that's on the slide, the guys who have done this one, they've filled in as much information as they can. You can create a really basic one, but Yelp has its own audience in its own right, so why wouldn't you try and sell on that platform at the same time?
So you may as well. So we've got Yelp there. Now on the next slide we're talking about local sites. So what do you mean by that?
These are sites that are they're local to you, so they're not sort of more generic like a sort of internet yellow page site like Yelp or anything like that. These are sites that are going to be very, very local to you. So more often than not, you'll see sites like local charities or TV stations or even newspapers. They will have a business section where they will list local businesses. If you can get a listing in there, then that's going to be really valuable to you.
I take it it's got to be relevant to that particular site that you're actually now putting your listing into. So there's no point going on to all the local charities and bombarding them if you're a company that makes hubcaps.
No. What you'll find with the charity sites as well is, if you've got an involvement with that charity, they'll be more than happy to add you there. If you just go for a local charity and sort of say, hey, can we have a link? They'll say why, no, there's no reason to. So yeah, there has to be an element of relevancy there.
Now, I know we're whizzing through a lot of information here, and it's absolutely fascinating. We've talked about local sites. What about coming away from the site a bit and looking just briefly at social media? We've got a slide here, social media, include locations in the main bio information. I'm just looking at yours there, London and Southampton. That's important, I take it, is it?
Definitely. Again, the more information that you're putting out there, the more that is going to then have a knock-on effect with Google. And it's the same with all social media profiles. You can include a location in any of them that you want to. And it just makes sense. Why wouldn't you say where you're based? Mm-hmm. Make sure it's included. These sort of sites won't prompt you for a location more often than not. So it's down to you to make sure that that's in there.
Okay, so do that with your social media. It is important. I mean, it really is important. We're talking about location. The next slide that we've got here, Google Local. Once again, get your business on Google. This is important too, isn't it? This is where you fill in and you show your location on the map and everything like that. So many businesses just don't do that, do they?
No, and this is probably the most important area, simply because these are Google platforms. If you don't include your information within there, you're kind of leaving that in the hands of Google. Some people will find when they go onto Google Places or Google Maps or even Google Plus now, they'll find that their business is already listed on there and there's already a profile there. And that's because Google has taken that information from the likes of Yelp.com and created it because they want to give you the most relevant information they can. But if you're not in charge of those profiles and you're not putting all the correct information in there, then again, you could be creating the wrong signals.
So you've really got to keep your finger on the pulse on this one, haven't you? All right, so let's get your business on Google. On the next slide here, what are we trying to show here? Picture of the map, add your business to Google Maps.
As simple as that, get on there straight away. Again, everything is free with Google, apart from pay-per-click, obviously. But if you just click on that link when you go to Google Maps and just start to fill out the form and just give as much information as possible, then you've got a profile that you are in complete control of and you can get your message out there.
Really got to be done, hasn't it? On the next slide here, this is showing the form as well. It is very, very straightforward. Just work your way through the form. We've done it for our side here. I think we have anyway. If not, we will do tomorrow. So fill in all the sections, give Google as much information as possible. Remember, Google is there as a tool to help you as a small business to actually make certain that you get the very most out of what the search engine is doing for you. So that's the actual form that you fill in. This here, we're looking at choose your Google categories carefully. I mean, these are words of warning, really, aren't they?
Definitely.
And we've got one slide, we'll just fill the slide in on that one. There we go. Choose your Google categories carefully.
This is more to do with Google Plus, although choosing your category is important across every single profile that you create. But Google Plus is now, it's here to stay. People still don't think that it's being used, but it is. And it's important that you have a Google Plus local page and a business page. At the moment, there's the two. I'd imagine in the future, they're actually going to culminate the two together and it'll be one big profile. But it's important that you make sure that you put in exactly the correct category, and in most cases, because we're talking about local, that's going to be a local business or a local place. But it's important you get that correct from the offer, as then you're going to start appearing for the wrong search terms.
Now, we've only got another 5 minutes left on the programme tonight, so let's very quickly work our way through the remainder of your sites. Fill in all sections, give Google, once again, as much information as you possibly can when you're adding your business. Telephone number's important there. Also, the location. Remember, this is all about being local. Once again, Google Plus, very, very powerful, isn't it, as well?
Very powerful, yes.
So we've got that. Let's just move on to the next slide, which is link your website.
Yes.
What's that all about then?
This basically verifies that your website is relevant to your Google Plus account or your Google profile. And it's very straightforward. You just put in a line of code into your website and the two marry up and you get a lovely nice tick.
And this can actually work with YouTube as well, can't it? So that everything is talking to each other. And you don't have to be a genius to do this, do you?
No.
It's just completely bringing all of it together in one particular place.
Definitely. And you want that connection to be made because, again, that's the signals you're trying to send across to Google.
So verify your site on Google Plus by linking your site to your profile. Very important. We're nearly at the end of the evening, but just finally, this slide here. if the organic URL is different to the local URL, both will rank. What are you talking about?
This is a little bit of a tip that not many people know about, but a lot of people are now starting to find out. When you verify your site with Google+, you're asked to put in your URL. Now, more often than not, you're going to put in your domain name because that's the site that you want verified. However, Google will not rank 2 listings that have the same URL. So if you appear locally, you won't appear organically because the domain URL is exactly the same. So the trick around it is to make sure that your Google Plus URL that you enter in is something like your Contact Us page or your Services page. So then you can double up on your ranking. So if you have a look at the slide that we've got for this one, the example I've got there for Rawson's Flowers, you can see that the 2 URLs are completely different. Therefore, they get 2 rankings, not 1.
What a clever, very clever idea. Talking of which, and there is only a few more slides left, I do know that. Review do's. What does that mean?
It's highly important if you want to sort of rank well, especially if you're a restaurant, that you have reviews coming in. So it's important that you reach out to your customers to try and gain these reviews.
So you ask them to review your restaurant and to do it online?
Definitely. Don't be ashamed to do that. A lot of people think you shouldn't do that, but if you are going to do that, make sure it's very prompt after you've made the sale or after they've visited your restaurant. Make it easy for them to review you, so send a URL to, for example, your Google Plus page where you want the review to go, and follow up from your initial email. If you email them and say, hey guys, how was it? Do you want to review us? And you haven't heard back, send them a second one, but don't push it too much.
Fantastic. So that's the reviews. Make certain you do that. Be prompt, make it easy, be creative, follow up on your initial email. Review don'ts.
Absolutely. Don't offer an incentive because then you're setting yourself up to offer that to everyone and you don't want to get into that. And one that kind of a lot of people will probably be a bit shocked at, don't ask for reviews on Yelp. The reason for this is because Yelp are trying to filter out spam profiles at the moment and spam reviews. If you suddenly get loads of reviews onto your profile on Yelp, that looks very unnatural, even if it is natural. So it's best not to ask for them on Yelp. Make sure they keep going to your Google page. That's where you want your reviews to go more than often than not. All right, so that's the reviews don'ts. Let's not do that. Let's move on to only a couple more slides to go. I'm right, aren't I?
Yes. They just keep on coming, don't they? Please write a Google review. We've just talked about that, haven't we? What's key about this particular slide?
Well, this is a really good experience of being a bit creative. When you reach out to your clients and you ask for a review, and I talked about making it easy, basically, these guys in America, these landscaping guys, sent this. So it's a step-by-step way of leaving a review. So rather than just saying, come to our site, here's a step-by-step. Not everyone's got a Google account. If not, there's a step as how to create it. I'm probably going to follow that and leave a review rather than just a generic email.
That is genius. Absolute genius. Okay, like that one. Citations. Go on then.
These are basically links that aren't physical links. These are mentions of your business. These are when you read something on maybe like a local news site and they mention a company. That's actually a citation. That's someone talking about your business. Again, from a local point of view, this is really important because more often than not, if someone's mentioning your business and it's in local press or something like that, they're going to mention your location. So it's important that you know what citations are and that you could kind of go after them as well.
I mean, we've covered loads and loads and loads, and I know there's so much more that we could cover this evening. From what we've covered tonight, the basic things to remember: bit of a pitch straight down the camera lens. Just look straight down the camera over there.
Yep.
What are the things that the small business should be thinking about? What are the key things they should be going through their mind at the moment, having watched you now for the last 60 minutes or so? What's the important things they should be doing? Okay, well, there's been a lot of information, obviously, but the things that you should be looking to do is make sure that your on-page optimization is up to date. Make sure that you've got all your local information on your site. If you can have a blog and you can keep it updated, then make sure you have one of those as well. And have a look at the rich snippets and the data highlighter as well. If you can get local listings from the kind of sites like Yale.com or Yelp, then make sure you can create profiles on there.
Make sure that the information on there is completely filled out and the address on there is exactly the same as the one that you've got on your website. And if you do nothing else, make sure that you go onto Google and you create all the Google profiles that you can. And again, make sure that all the information on there is relevant and up to date.
Andy, we could have talked for hours and hours and hours. There's still another dozen or so slides that we could work our way through, but quite frankly, life is too short. But what Andy has said is that he will come back and join us again on the programme. Can we thank you, Andy, for joining us this evening? It's been an absolute pleasure having you with us. Once again, just remind us of the company.
It's Kuzai.
And if we don't feel we have the skills to do what we're doing on the website here, you're the guys to go to?
Absolutely.
And you can find the website. The website address is?
Kuzai.com.
It's as easy and as straightforward as that. Listen, can I just say thank you very much to you for watching the programme, and we'll be back again next Wednesday night with Business Connections Live. We'll look forward to your company then. We'll be back on the air live at 7 o'clock. But until then, from me, Steve Harland, and all the team here at Business Connections Live, have yourselves a really good week and successful selling, marketing, and get that website in check. Till next time, bye for now. Bye-bye.